see how we can move forward and make this more relevant. So we will be doing an overview of the Bhagavad Gita, but we are not going to do a Gita. Okay, sorry. Please put it there. So we will be doing a Gita overview, but I'm not planning to do a chapter-wise overview because that will become very technical. If I go into each chapter and summarize each chapter, I'm going to do more of a conceptual overview of the Gita. That means, what are the concepts that the Gita talks about and how those concepts are developed so that Arjuna can be freed from distress, or like we can say, Arjuna moves from living in pain to living with pain. So while doing this conceptual development, we will address various themes in various chapters, and we'll try to go chapter wise. The focus won't be on a chapter wise development. So basically, Arjuna moves from confusion to clarity, from not knowing what to do to what to do. And there are 3 steps in the argument that Krishna builds. Now those 3 steps can be divided into many further steps, but broadly there are 3 steps associated with 3 fundamental tenets of the Gita's worldview. So those 3 steps I'll be summarizing in terms of an acronym ACT. A-C-T. And the 3 tenets that the Gita addresses are Jagat, Jeev and Jagadish. That the world, we understand the nature of the world, we understand the nature of the self, and we understand the nature of God. And if we understand these 3 things, then we can face life with much more clearer perspective. So let's begin. So these 3 steps, now these 3 are not necessarily associated with the 3 sections of the Gita, because these themes come in all the chapters, in many different places. But so once we understand the worldview of the Gita, all these 3, when we understand properly, that helps us to find a profound meaning in our life. And that profound meaning can make whatever distress might be there in our life, it will make that distress bearable for us. That's how we move from living with pain, living in pain, to living in pain. So Arjuna knows he has to fight a war, and he does go on to fight it, and he has to shoot arrows against Bhishma and Drona. But Krishna gives him a vision that makes it bearable. So just to illustrate this point, that say, one of the things Krishna tells Arjuna is that the first thing he says is that we are not our physical selves, we are spiritual beings. So Arjuna is thinking that I will kill Bhishma, kill Bhishma, kill my grandfather. How can I do that? How is that bearable? That's unacceptable. That's intolerable. But what Krishna tells Arjuna is that Bhishma is a soul who will get a new body. And that understanding, when that comes to the forefront of Arjuna's consciousness, now still there is pain, because he will no longer have the association of Bhishma. His grandfather will no longer be there in his life. But that understanding that the body is like a dress. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya. That just as when a dress grows old, we discard that dress and we get a new dress. Like that, when the body grows old, the soul discards the body and gets a new body. And the purpose of this is not to justify indiscriminate killing of the body or destroying of the person physically, but it is just to state that this is going to happen, but this is basically the first teaching of the Gita. See, war means death. That's a very real and often inevitable possibility. Now, the death can be seen as a termination, as the end of existence, or death can be seen as a transition. And the Gita's first teaching is that we learn to see death as a transition. That there is a part of us that continues to exist even after bodily death. So the reason why Krishna introduces the concept of the soul, because in one sense the strongest argument of Arjuna is that the last word he says, Katham Bhishma Mamsaki, how can I kill Bhishma and Drona? Krishna addresses that argument, you are not actually killing them. They are souls and they will go to another body. So death can be, if you consider a sentence, death can be seen as a full stop or death can be seen as a comma. And what the Gita essentially says is that we are all spiritual beings, we are souls within the body. And as the soul in the body, while we want the welfare of both is desired, but relatively speaking, the soul's welfare is much, much more important because the soul is enduring. It's like if somebody is staying in a rented house. Now, they would like to keep the rented house also very well. But if it's a choice between protecting the person and protecting the rented house, okay, let the rented house be demolished or be destroyed. You run out if there's an earthquake. No, we don't try to hold the house up. We run out of the house. So the body is like a rented house for us. And he said, don't reduce Bhishma to just a body. This is the person living in the house. The person is much more important. This is the first point that Krishna makes in 2:11 to 30. That is the first in response to Arjuna in the section 11 to 30. He focuses on Atma Gyan, the knowledge of the soul, and the repeated theme that comes in 25, 26, 28, 30 is Natvam shochitum arhasi, nainam shochitum arhasi, nanu shochitum arhasi. Do not lament. Once you understand that the soul is eternal, do not lament. Now, having said this, after that, okay, Bhishma is not going to die, but does that justify my fighting? That is the bigger question. And then Krishna starts addressing that question. Okay? So, education has two distinct aspects to it. To complexify the simple and to simplify the complex. Now we may say education only means to make things simple. Well, not necessarily. Like somebody says, this person murdered someone, they should be hanged. Okay. But then complexify the simple. It's simple. If they're a murderer should be hanged. Okay. But In what circumstances they murdered or they were murdered, if they killed. Maybe that person was about to kill them and they killed in self-defense. Then that gives a completely different spin to the whole thing, isn't it? So reality is often quite complex, and we may approach reality from a very simplistic framework. Like somebody who has a hammer, and a small kid finds, oh, hammer, you can push it, you hit a hammer and the nail goes into the wall, nice. He discovers the power of the hammer. For somebody who has a hammer, everything seems to be like a nail. Just smash it, smash it, smash it. No, life is not that simple. So the Gita does both of these things. Arjuna is thinking at his level. So actually this particular diagram which I'm going to make, this will be a fairly complicated diagram. But this in one sense summarizes the intricate thought flow of the Gita. So Arjuna is basically thinking there are two options for him. Fight or don't fight. And fighting he associates with work or act. And don't fight he associates with renounce. And he is thinking that not fighting or renouncing. Oh, I fight and I get a kingdom. That's not really. Is a kingdom worth killing one's own relatives? It's not worth it. So he sees only these two options. Now what Krishna does is, he tells that actually there are multiple categories. So for example, if you renounce, there can be premature renunciation. There can be mature renunciation. Premature renunciation means if somebody may renounce things just because they are frustrated. Now, first let me complete the categories, then I'll explain the categories. There's premature renunciation, there is mature renunciation. Then if you work, which is associated with basically act, so there can be sinful action, there can be attached action, and there can be detached action. Now, sinful and attached are not the same thing. Like say, if we have a child and we care for the child, we may be very attached to a child. But there is nothing sinful in that. That's a responsibility for us to do. But say, if somebody wants to want something, to get something for their child, and because of that they decide I'll rob and I'll steal and I'll lie, that's what will make it sinful. Okay? So there is there are multiple grades. What Krishna is doing is, what is simple, Arjuna is not that simple. So let's look at, so sinful action and attached action, the difference is very clear. Now attached action and detached action, that is a significant theme in the Gita. But attached action means we think, what's in it for me? Detached action is, okay, I do this because it's my service, it's my responsibility. It's what I'm contributing to this. That is what matters. So attached action means, it's like, this is what I contribute. That's the focus of detached action. Attached is what I get. So now what is the difference between premature renunciation and mature renunciation? Premature renunciation, this is basically frustration. In life, everyone gets frustrated at times. And when they're frustrated, they say, I just don't want to do anything with this. So about 25 years ago when I was in Pune, and one boy came to our temple and he said that, what is the process for becoming a brahmachari here? Now, I had never seen him in the temple. At that time, it was a very small temple, so most of us knew who used to come. So I asked him, so do you really want to become a brahmachari? He said that I'm going to decide by Sunday. Okay. What is going to happen on Sunday? He said, I have proposed to a girl and she's going to reply by Sunday. If she refuses, I'll become a brahmachari. So now, that I suggest rejection in a relationship is no qualification for renunciation. So the difference between renunciation and frustration is the difference between fasting and starving. So fasting means it's like I have the ability to get food, but I have the resolve to not eat. But starving means that I don't know ability, although there is strong desire. I want food, but I just can't get it. So frustration is we want something, but we're not able to get it, so just quit it. But if the opportunity comes to get it in future, we'll want it eventually. So many times when renunciation is there, if it is because of frustration, then that is not a sustainable renunciation. Krishna tells Arjuna, right now you are saying, I don't want to fight. But tomorrow if you hear news that the Kauravas are committing atrocities, they are tormenting innocent people, then the warrior within you, the protector within you, will not be able to stay peaceful. You say, I want to fix this. But if you renounce the world, then the idea is that you should not care about the world. So premature renunciation is where it is unhealthy, it is unsustainable. It can even be hypocritical, where one just wants the fame and prestige of being a renunciate while privately wanting to indulge in the pleasure. So now, among these, intuitively, which ones do you think Krishna recommends and which one does Krishna not recommend? What about premature renunciation? Does he recommend that? No. What about mature renunciation? Okay. It sounds reasonable. Krishna would recommend that. So let's put a yes. Sinful action? No. Certainly not. Attached action? No. Yeah. It's no exactly, but let's put a small no over there. I'll tell you why. What about detached action? Yes. So, now, associated with these categories, Krishna brings in different paths now. For mature renunciation, there are two paths. There is Dhyan Yoga and there is Gyan Yoga. And with respect to detached action, there is Karma Yoga and there is Bhakti Yoga. So, now, attached action is what the Gita calls as Karma Kanda. And Krishna does not reproach that, but he certainly doesn't recommend that. Now, this is Vikarma, sinful action. Vikarma is the opposite of karma. That's something which is not to be done. Now, premature renunciation is what the later acharyas call as Falgu Vairagya, false renunciation. So, Krishna mentions this especially in 3.6. This he talks mainly in chapter 6. Gyan Yoga he talks about various places, especially 13 to 18. Vikarma, he talks about this in 3:22 to 24, among other places. Karma Kanda, he talks about in many places. Especially he talks about this from 2.31 to 37. Karma Yoga, he talks about it from chapters broadly from 3 to 5. And Bhakti Yoga, he talks about it from chapters 7 to 12. And then he comes out with 18 in the end also. So that's why I said this particular diagram, in one sense, summarizes the entire Gita. What is being said over here. And initially, Krishna starts by telling Arjuna that, as I said, he's talking about the point that you have to function in the world. We talk about three things. What is the acronym? ACT. A-C-T. So his first point is that we all have to, the A is, it's the mature enunciation and detached action. Both of them Krishna recommends, but actually he recommends this much more. So then the specific context of the Gita, Krishna actually does not recommend Dhyan Yoga or Jnana Yoga so much. He recommends Karma Yoga and he recommends Bhakti Yoga the most. This is where it comes in 1866. And why he does that, we will come to it eventually. So, when Arjuna is saying that, okay, not fighting is better than fighting, Krishna says that basically more important than the action that you are doing is the intention with which you are doing the action. Now the action certainly matters, but the intention also matters. Essentially, see, when we are going to do the question of what is the right action. So basically in ethics, there are broadly two kinds of ethics. One is categorical ethics and the other is contextual ethics. Categorical means basically reality. If this is the reality, it's just divided into neat categories. This is right, this is wrong, this is white, that is black. And everybody has their basis for such categorization. So for example, somebody may say that speaking truth is right, speaking lies is bad. And yes, there's truth to that, no doubt. But suppose there is a terrorist mob on the right and they are targeting a particular demographic. And our friend belongs to that demographic and a friend comes running and knocks on our door, please, hide me somewhere, save me. And we take our friend and hide in our basement somewhere. And those rioters come and knock violently on our door. Is he here? Now, what should we do? Should we speak the truth? Well, is lying good? No. But in this context, while speaking truth is important, but there is a higher value which is protecting a person's life. So basically contextual ethics, what it says is that we have to look at so categorical just looks at the content of the action. Did you speak the truth or did you speak the lie? But contextual ethics looks at the content of an action. It also looks at the intent of the action. And it also looks at the consequence of the action. So when all three are considered, then a decision is made. That is much more reflective of reality. That what did we do, why did we do it, and what was the result after we did it. So Arjuna is starting with categorical ethics. He's saying that, okay, how can I fight against my relatives? That's just wrong. Although a part of Arjuna also knows that, okay, we should actually be fight. I mean, I have to fight because I'm a warrior, but how can I fight against my relatives? So at least at the start of the Gita, the primary criteria that Arjuna is using is fighting against relatives is bad. And then he gives various reasons for that. So Krishna tells Arjuna that basically all three factors have to be considered. And now, which is more important when Sometimes the intent may be more important, sometimes the consequence may be more important, sometimes the content may be more important. It varies. Just to give an example of these, say suppose a doctor diagnoses a particular patient and prescribes a medicine. And then that medicine has some, it is contraindicated, there are some side effects. And the patient becomes more patient disease worsens. Now, was the doctor wrong in doing that? Well, it depends. If the doctor did not read the case history of the patient and gave the medicine, or the doctor had the case history but didn't consider it, then it's the doctor's mistake. But suppose there was no indication from the case history that this medicine could have counterproductive effect, then it's not ethically, professionally wrong. Still the doctor may feel, this is complicated, we'll do this. Doctor may help treat the patient. But so, in that case, although the effect was bad, the consequence was bad, still the action itself cannot be considered to be wrong. Although, the doctor may want to do more research and find, okay, in this case, maybe I'll not prescribe this medicine in the future. You can learn from experience. Sometimes, especially where the hospital themselves just become like big business, there the doctors may just want to make sure that they meet their quota of recommending say CT scan or this or that. They may intentionally complicate a treatment. That's also possible. So the intent, you might say you are actually giving treatment only, you are only doing diagnosis, but the intent is not so just to be sure the patient doesn't have a complication. The intent is to make sure that you meet whatever the hospital is expecting you for target. That could make it bad. So intent, content and consequence, all three need to be considered. And what Krishna does primarily is elevate the intent. He says that you are only thinking under the fighting or not fighting. I want to ask you, look at why you are doing what you are doing. And then Krishna also tells Arjuna how with the elevated intent, when you fight, the consequence will also be better. The results will be more auspicious. So, how does this elevating of intent happen? Like as I said, I'll be making things a little more complicated before I make them simple. But that's a part of education. So let's look at one of the most confusing verses in the Gita. And I hope some of you will enjoy the confusion. Let's look at this. But this verse talks about this particular theme. So let's recite it. Karmanya akarmaya pashe akarmani cha karmayah sabuddhiman manusyeshu sayuktah kritsna karma krit. So Krishna is telling here, sabuddhiman manusyeshu. Such a person is buddhiman, such a person is wise. Who is the person who is wise? Karmanya akarmaya pashed. So the vision of the wise, Krishna is telling. What is that? Karmanya akarmaya pashed. So in action, see in action. Karmanya akarmaya pashed. And akarmani cha karmayah. Akarmani, karmanya, in action, see in action. Karmanya akarmaya pashed, akarmani cha karmaya. In action, or rather you can put it, in inaction, see action. Now, what does this mean? If we will say that this is the criteria of being intelligent, then maybe we have to question whether we are intelligent. But let's consider an example to illustrate this. Say, if a riot is going on. What's happening? If a riot is going on, and the police do nothing. Now, by doing nothing, they are doing a lot, isn't it? They will be culpable for doing nothing. If a riot is going on and the police say, I didn't do anything. And it's like, somebody say, I didn't do anything. I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I didn't do anything. That's what we have to be ashamed of. Isn't it? So in crime, there are crimes of commission and crimes of omission. So crimes of omission is where you are supposed to do something and you don't do it. You overlook it. So if the police do nothing, then in their action, in inaction, see action. So action basically here means culpability, responsibility. You will get karmic reaction for what you do. You will be held responsible for what you are doing. By not doing anything, you will be considered a criminal. On the other hand, the police attack the rioters. Now, attacking someone, injuring somebody, it's not a pleasant thing to do. That's not necessarily an enjoyable thing to do. But when the police do attack the rioters, police will be not culpable. Because, why? The action was for the right purpose. The purpose was to protect citizens, to quell the riots. So essentially, the vision of the wise is that we can't just look at actions superficially. We have to look at the context in which the action is done. And based on that, you decide. So for Arjuna, the application is, Krishna is telling Arjuna that if you don't fight, you will be culpable. You are like the police who don't stop the riots. You do nothing, but by doing nothing, you become culpable. So, karmanya akarmaya pashed, akarmani cha karmaya. So, and when Krishna is speaking this, as I said, what he's talking about is, we look at the intent of the action. And looking at the intent of the action is much more important than just looking at the content. And this is where, if you go back to this particular diagram, you remember this? That Krishna is talking about these 5 different things. That premature renunciation, mature renunciation, sinful action, attached action, and detached action. So detached action, this itself can seem to be like a irony. Or what is it? Detached action, not exactly irony. It is what in English is called an oxymoron. Oxymoron is basically 2 opposite ideas brought together. That was a brilliantly stupid answer. Well, is it brilliant or is it stupid? If 2 ideas are brought together simultaneously, that was heroic cowardice. Either it's hero or you're a coward. How can the 2 come together simultaneously? So, normally speaking, if somebody is detached, why would they do anything at all? Isn't it? Why? I was speaking in Harvard, and after that, one person, I was speaking on the Gita wisdom for purposeful living. And there's one person, he said, I have read the Gita. He says, the Gita tells you to be detached. And if it tells you to be detached, then how can you be purposeful? He says, be detached from the results. And being purposeful means seeking some results. Then we have a purpose means we want to do something. He says that, how can the Gita teach purposeful living? And on top of that, if we are detached, what will even motivate us to do anything? Many of us may have heard from the verse of the karmanneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So, now for most people, the fruits are what motivate them to work. Many self-help books will tell that have a clear vision of what you want to do. Begin with the end in mind. The clearer the picture of what you want to achieve, the more will be your motivation to do things. So And the Gita is saying detached action. What does it actually mean? So basically there's a difference between fruits, karmanyama phaleshu kadachana, it says. Fruits, we can translate as results, and goals. So results come after the work. Goals are set before the work. So in the same section, Krishna says don't be attached to the result, that's 247. But in that same chapter, just a few verses earlier, in 241, Krishna says, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. He says, have one purpose. And those who are not one-pointed, if you don't have one purpose, then the world will create thousands of purposes and you will get nowhere in life. Bahushakha yanantasya buddhayo avyavasayina. So, Krishna is not telling us don't set goals. That's fine. He says don't be attached to results. Now, what is the difference? Again, as I said, goals are what we set before we do an activity. Results are what we get after we have done the activity. So, normally we think that if I do an action, I will get the result. The action leads to the result. And to some extent, this is true. If I am thirsty, I stretch my hand, I take this bottle of water, I drink. I quench my thirst. So action leads to result. But most things in life are not that simple. Basically, what the Gita says, there is action, there is present action. And then there is action, that is the past action. It is past karma. And when we get a result, it is not just coming from our present action. It is actually a combination of present and past action that leads to results. That now, how much is the component of the past action? We don't know that. Let me just give an example of what present and past action mean to results. Say, two people may pick up a violin and start playing a violin. Now, one person plays a violin and everybody comes close to hear. Other person plays a violin, everybody goes as far as away they can. Now, the action is the same, but the result is very different. Now, that's because maybe the first person has practiced violin for maybe weeks or months or years. Maybe the person has talent naturally. So, the present action is playing the violin. But that alone does not determine the result. So, present action plus past action. Both combine to produce the result. And the past action can go to varying degrees in the past. It can go to the past 6 months, it can go to past 1 year, it can go to past one lifetime, it can go to multiple lifetimes in the past. So basically the actions can range from where basically if the component is 100 action, 100 result over here. It can also be that my action is 100 over here, but from my past minus 100 comes up. And the result I get is 0. Sometimes it can also be that my action is 0, the past is 100, and I get the result. So all these combinations are possible. That means, like say, some people are just phenomenally talented. On YouTube, you may see some videos of some small kids, they're just still in diapers and they're playing a harmonium. Now, what practice have they done now? From this lifestyle, but they're just called what we call as prodigies. They've done no practice, but There are 100 actions coming from the previous life, from the past. So when Krishna is telling Arjuna, karmanyevadhikarasti ma phaleshvaram, detached action, he says that if your intent, his intent is what? That I want to do the right thing, I want to do the duty. Now, if your intent is right, then don't be too fixated on the results. That, will this result come, will that result come? Our focus should be on what we are contributing to the work, to the endeavor, not what we are getting from the work. But focus is too much. At every moment, we are always, what will I get out of this? What will I get out of this? What will I get out of this? Then we will never be able to focus, we'll never be able to dedicate. So when Krishna tells detached action, in Arjuna's context, this detached action can be both karma yoga, it can be bhakti yoga. But in the first few chapters, Krishna is talking about karma yoga over here. So the first 6 chapters. But basically the idea is that he's telling that you focus on doing your duty. And what results come, don't be too fixated on that. Because the results are not in your control. Now this does not mean you don't care for the results. It's like if somebody cooking food and they say, I'm detached from the quality of the food. Well, no, you cannot be detached. You have to be concerned. But we understand that sometimes things are not in our control. So detachment, what it does not mean irresponsibility. It does not mean apathy. It does not mean lethargy. These 3 are different. Lethargy is laziness. Apathy is I don't care for the. Lethargy is I don't care to do the activity only. Apathy is I don't care what happens. Irresponsibility is where I will just do what I want to do without considering the bigger picture. So detachment is none of these things. What Krishna is saying about detachment is basically when we are acting, it is maturity. Maturity in understanding how things work in reality. So Arjuna has been put in a situation where he has to fight a war. That is not an option for him. Now what is going to result from the war? He goes in with a virtuous intention. But he shouldn't fixate too much on the results. So detach from the results. Detachment is not, as I said, lack of concern. It is not that I don't care for the results. It is rather we care for something bigger than the immediate results. Something bigger than the immediate results. And what that bigger is will be revealed as the Gita moves forward. I'll make 2 quick points and then we can have question answers. So, in chapter 3, basically this Karma Yoga is talked about in chapters 3, 4 and 5. Now, generally speaking, say if we are a teacher and somebody asks a question, then okay, we answer the question. And then after some time, the same person asks the exact same question again. Then what is likely to happen? So, if same question is repeated, there are 2 unhealthy responses. One is repeat the exact same answer. The person may say, yeah, actually, my hearing is not the problem. I got the answer, but I didn't get the answer. So repeating the exact same answer is not very helpful. The other would be insult the intelligence of the questioner. I just answered the question. Are you so dumb? You forgot already? Now again, this is not very helpful. So basically, why am I mentioning this? In 3.1, 3.1 and 2 and 5.1, Arjuna asks the same question essentially. But how does Krishna respond? That shows his expertise as a teacher. So basically the same question is repeated. The healthier way to do it, respond is answer from a different perspective. Okay, you didn't get the previous perspective, you didn't get the previous answer, let me answer from a different perspective. And then generally a good answer will try to answer from maybe 2, 3, 4 different perspectives. And then at least one of the perspectives, it clicks with the question. Okay, this makes sense. That doesn't, this makes. So we will see, this is in the Karma Yoga chapter only, but overall if you look at the Gita, the same question essentially is asked in 2.7, in 3.12, in 5.1, and finally in 18.1. At each of these places, Arjuna answers the questions differently. He takes the discussion deeper and deeper as he moves ahead in the discussion. So, in the third chapter, Arjuna is essentially saying the same thing, that no, actually inaction is better than action. Fifth chapter is saying inaction is better than action. The same thing. But Krishna answers from different perspectives. And let's look at these two different perspectives. So this is the point of an expert teacher. Let's look a little bit about these two different perspectives. And then we'll conclude the fifth chapter. Sixth chapter we'll discuss in our next session. So here, in the fifth chapter, in the third chapter, Krishna has talked primarily. Arjuna is saying, should I fight? Should I not fight? So Krishna says that if you don't fight, your renunciation will be premature. You will be a mithyachari. You still desire the results, but internally desire the results, externally you're giving up the actions. Now in the fifth chapter, when Krishna speaks, Krishna takes to a spiritual vision of all of reality. What he's doing is, he's telling how do actions really work in this world, and what is the best way to function when we have to work. So this theme will come later in the Bhakti Yoga section also. We pointed there, but I'll make it here because in the Bhakti Yoga section we want to discuss other things. See, broadly, when actions happen, there are three factors. There is God's will, there is free will, and there is evil. So, God's will is Jagadish. Free will is the Jiva. And evil is the Jagat. Jagat means Prakriti, material nature. It is the conditioning that happens within us. So what do I mean by this? That when somebody does something, it could be that, okay, when somebody goes and drinks, let's consider the example of drinking. Now, it could be because of free will. They went and drank. But sometimes a person says, I am not going to drink. And Oscar Wilde said that giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So, I gave up smoking, but smoking didn't give me up. It comes back to me again and again. So what happens over here is, it's that drinking is, now the word evil, what it means is, it's the anartha, it's the dark conditioning that is there within us. Arjuna also voices this predicament when he says that I am pushed to do something even if I don't want to do it. That he says, Anichan apivarshneya balladivo niyojita. So free will is where I want to do something, but evil is where I don't want to do it, but still I am pushed to do it. Now does that mean we don't have free will? Does it mean that what has happened to the free will? So this God's will part, I will talk later, but right now I'm only going to focus on the free will and the evil part. So in medical literature, also there is a lot of discussion, say about addiction. Especially, now there are two broad views of addiction. Addiction is a moral deficiency. That you should give up drinking. Just be strong. Have a strong willpower, give it up. But the other is, it is a medical disorder. That means it's a disease. If somebody has a disease, like if somebody is coughing, just use your willpower, stop coughing. That's not going to work. Or if somebody has digestive disorder and they lose motions, come on, have willpower. That's not going to work. So, is an addiction a moral deficiency or is it a medical disorder? What do you think? How many of you say it's moral deficiency? Okay. How many of you say it's a medical disorder?
Starts with one and becomes
Okay, starts with one and becomes other. Yeah. So in general, in the political world, there is the political right and the political left. So in general, the political right, it's focused on individual responsibility. So they will hold that addiction is a moral deficiency. You have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Whereas the political left, they are all about social conditionings. So they look at social conditioning. That's why their idea is focus on social justice. Why do people become addicted? Because they came from terrible neighborhoods. They had abuse in their childhood. And there is some truth to that. But the point is that there are both these views, and both these views have some merit to it. So what the Gita explains is that we all have our nature. And when we act in particular ways, it's like, okay, no, let me make it steeper. So I was in Calgary, I had a talk in a university which is on top of a hill. And this was winter. So while we were going up a winding road up the hill, we saw various snowballs rolling down the hill. And it's fascinating, we saw how those snowballs are formed. So it's like at the top, it is not even a snowball, it's a snow pebble. It's so tiny that that person is standing here, that person could just kick it and it will break apart. But then as it keeps rolling down, it starts becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. It gains mass, it gains momentum. And by the time it comes down, that same person would be crushed by it. So our actions are also like a snowball. So any behavior, any wrong behavior, it starts as a moral deficiency. It starts any unhealthy behavior, any anartha. It's when a person drinks for the first time. Now, nobody is born with a bottle in their mouth. Maybe at least not an alcoholic bottle. So nobody is born with a cigarette in their mouth. So it starts as a moral deficiency. You could say that somebody is in a terrible neighborhood. Okay, but still they make that choice. But over a period of time, as the conditioning starts becoming stronger and stronger, then it becomes a medical disorder. When it's a medical disorder that means that just willpower is not enough to cure it. Now again, when we say medical disorder, it's not that willpower is irrelevant. Like if somebody has a digestive disorder, then willpower is not enough. But at the same time, willpower is necessary. The doctor says, okay, for the next 1 week or next 3 days, you just take some soups. Don't take any heavy food. To follow that requires willpower. If the doctor says that, okay, take this medicine, even if it tastes bitter to you, that's willpower is required. So here also willpower, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Willpower is necessary, but it is not sufficient. So we all have free will and we all have conditionings. And those conditionings can become evil. They can impel us to do evil. And when this starts happening, at that time, when the conditioning become too strong, it's almost impossible to get out of it. So when Krishna is addressing Arjuna, he says that you are thinking that it's just your free will. That you will decide you will fight or you will not fight. But it is not that simple. No, you are choosing to act, but there are conditionings from within you which are also prompting you to act. And we need to act in such a way. We all have certain conditionings within us. We need to act in a way that our unhealthy conditionings are weakened, not strengthened. We need to act in a way that the unhealthy conditionings, their grip on us doesn't become stronger, it becomes weaker. And Krishna tells Arjuna in the context of the Gita that, I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, that he says that if you choose not to fight, you are giving into weakness. You may not think it is weakness, you may think that it is broad-mindedness. I am concerned about Bhishma and Drona. But that is weakness. And when you give in to that weakness, it will become stronger and stronger. And right now, you may choose, okay, I don't want to fight because of these reasons. But once we start doing one thing, it starts becoming worse and worse and worse. Until eventually, it just becomes impossible to give it up. So this whole thing is called, in philosophy, it's called etiology. Etiology is basically the study of causation. Causation means, now etiology is sometimes used in epidemiology, in the study of how epidemics spread, how diseases spread, what causes disease. So there's a medical context to it, but philosophical context also to it. That when we are acting, what is it that is making us act? So sometimes we get angry, and afterwards, sometimes, actually that was not me. What do you mean that was not me? It's like something else possessed me and made me speak like that. And it is, to some extent, it feels like that. So basically, when we are talking about action, we could look at when Krishna, now how am I linking this to earlier point, be detached from the results, Arjuna said. Now, or Krishna told Arjuna. So when we are doing actions, there can be results at various levels. There is an immediate result, there is an intermediate result, and then there is an ultimate result. So the ultimate result is liberation, is attainment of God. And that Krishna will talk about more and more in the middle 6 chapters and in the final 6 chapters. Now the immediate result is, in this case, it could be victory or defeat. So, but intermediate result will be his elevation. Elevation means his conditionings going down, or his degradation. Degradation means the conditionings become stronger. So, for example, if somebody is treating me unfairly, harshly, rudely. Now, at that time, I can yell at that person, and maybe I can have more power than that other person, and I can force that person to comply my way. Especially when there is a power asymmetry. If I am more powerful than the other person, I can just yell at them and get them to do my way. But if I do that, if I use force when it is not necessary, then what will happen is, that will become the tendency. Instead of persuading, instead of helping the person see reason, we force them, And then tomorrow I might come to a situation where force may not work. And I might try to use force. So if I try to yell and scare somebody, get them to do my way, and then tomorrow I yell and try to scare someone who turns out to be more powerful than me, then not only will I not get the thing done, but I will have made an enemy. But at that time, it will not be my choice at all. It might be just my conditioning. Because I use force to get my way, that becomes my conditioning, and I just keep using that force, even without thinking about it. So Krishna is telling that when you are functioning, Arjuna, don't let the immediate results consume your mind so much that you don't look at other results. So the results in the world matter, but the results in our mind matter even more. So this whole thing you can summarize in one sentence, that we may not be caught for our wrongdoings. Sometimes some people can do something wrong and get away with it. Once a person was going way above the speed limit and a cop pulled him over. And he says, "Did you see the speed limit?" "I saw the speed limit, I just didn't see you." No, nobody would say like that. So foolish to say that. But most people, they think that if I can do something wrong and I can get away with it, then there is no problem with it. But we may not be, and sometimes we may get away with it. Sometimes nowadays in phones there are apps also. There's an app called Cop Nearby. So if there's a cop nearby, then or maybe the name has changed. But the idea is you can go fast, and afterwards you go slowly. We may not be caught for our wrongdoings, but we will be caught by our wrongdoings. Caught for means there is some external agency which is going to catch us. But internally what happens is the actions create conditionings within us. And those conditionings will impel us to do the same thing again and again. And therefore, we need to act in a way that is not worsening our conditionings. We need to act in a way that is going to elevate us, not degrade us. And in that sense, Krishna is saying, Arjuna, you fight, because that is what will free you, or to ensure that the conditioning of dodging responsibility does not form in you, of evading responsibility just because it is difficult. Once it is formed, it's like starting a snow pebble from the top. It will start going down, down, down further. Now, if you do your duty, even if it is difficult, then what will happen is, gradually that difficulty will become more and more bearable. And all the complexity associated with that activity, it will be Padma Patramivambasa. It will be just like water on a lotus petal. It will, if you are doing it with a higher purpose in mind, then all that complexity, all that negativity, all that attachment that might result, that will just slip away. So Karma Yoga focuses more on the intermediate effects. It talks of the ultimate, and we'll talk about the ultimate effects in our next section on Bhakti Yoga, which we'll be discussing tomorrow. But here, Krishna answers Arjuna's question from a different perspective. Why be detached? Why engage in detached action? Because that will ensure that your conditionings become weaker, not stronger. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. So we are discussing chapter 2 to 5 overview today. Where the first point discussed is about Krishna in 2:11 to 30 gives Atma Gyan. And why Atma Gyan? It is basically to take the wind out of Arjuna's strongest argument. Arjuna's strongest argument is, how can I fight against Bhishma and Drona? So Krishna tells Arjuna that they are actually, he says, how can I kill Bhishma? He says, you are not killing Bhishma. Actually, Bhishma is a soul, and the soul will get a new body. So this is a way in which philosophy can immediately provide us some context. Like we talked about, essentially what the Gita is going to do is from live in pain to what? Live with pain. Pain is going to be there, but the pain is minimized. Then the second point was the most elaborate point. Like education has two different aspects. One is simplify the complex and then complexify the simple. So if somebody thinks the situation is so simple, if somebody has killed someone, they should be killed. But if they killed in self-defense, what about that? Consider nuances. So Arjuna is thinking that simply don't fight or fight, which he is thinking in terms of act or renounce or act. So Krishna says there are multiple factors over there. There is premature renunciation, there is mature renunciation, there is sinful action, there is attached action, and then there is detached action. So among these, premature renunciation Krishna does not recommend. Sinful action, attached action does not recommend. Now mature renunciation we talked about in Dhyan Yoga and Gyan Yoga. And detached action we talked about in terms of Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So we focused on the discussion of Karma Yoga, and in the discussion of Karma Yoga I talked about how there's a difference between setting goals and being attached to results. So detachment is from the results, not from goals. So when you are detached, that is not being that's not irresponsibility, that's not apathy, that's not lethargy. So why should we set goals? But how can we set goals? Krishna mentions this in 241. But don't be attached to results, he says in 247. So how can it work? That how can we set goals but not be attached to results? That means that we do an activity, but we understand that it is my action alone does not produce the result. It is that past actions also contribute, and because we don't know what past actions are going to contribute and how, that's why we seek a result, but we don't fixate on the result. We are more accepting, understanding that results may not always come the way we want them. And then the fourth point I discussed was Krishna as an expert teacher. So when the same question is asked, when the question is repeated, there are two unhealthy ways to answer it. One is just repeat answer. The other is insult the intelligence. How dumb you are. You didn't get it. Better is, what is it? Answer from different perspective. So when Arjuna repeats the same question that he has asked in 3.1 and 2 in 5.1, then Krishna answers in the 5th chapter by going into etiology. Etiology is the study of causation. So when action happens, there are three factors over there. What are the three factors? God's will, free will, and evil. So we focused on free will and evil at this point. So we discussed how addiction is initially it's like a snow pebble where it's a matter of morality, but afterwards when it becomes a snow boulder, huge. At that time, addiction becomes or a behavior becomes a medical disorder. So basically, we want to act in such a way that our conditionings are decreased and not increased. So for Arjuna, the way he should act is that not dodge responsibility because it is difficult, but act knowing that even if the results don't come his way, he needs to be doing what is his responsibility. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, are there any questions or comments? We have His Grace Gaurang Prabhu here with us. Prabhu, you would like to speak some words to enlighten us? Hare
Hare Krishna. Now I would like to express gratitude to all of our participants who have come to understand the Gita in a very detailed manner. When you look at the Gita externally, it may appear very simple, but the number of layers which are involved in trying to understand the Gita are very, very deep. And I think all of us are fortunate to have someone like Chaitanya Charan Prabhu who uncovers various aspects of the Gita every time I listen to him. So I think the world needs these perspectives, because today with mental health crisis, people have a tendency to resort to the pill when they have a mental health crisis. Whereas the Gita is recommending that rather than popping the pill, you can change your perspective. So I think what you are getting in these 2 days or 3 days is various fascinating perspectives on how to not live in pain, but how to live with pain. Because the world consists of only 2 categories of people. One who go through pain, and the one who know the purpose behind that pain. So we hope that at the end of these sessions, many of you will have a deeper understanding of the purpose behind the pain, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita is trying to share with everybody. So again, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, we look forward to many, many seminars of yours at Govardhan Eco Village. This is your home, away from home, and we hope that many of the people here will get the benefit of your association. Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Do we have time for questions now?
Yes.
Hare Krishna. I'm Bhumika from Mumbai. So as you spoke about detachment, so while we practice detachment, we do not expect anything specific from a result. Which over a course of time, we do not have an opinion about it over the result. And
Do not have opinion.
yeah, like we want something or we do not want something, right? And then over the course of time, it leads to losing your identity. Like you do not know what you want and what you do not want. So is it actually about it that you become null, or is it about still holding your identity and having some opinion?
Oh, okay. See, the whole point of detachment is shifting our focus. It is not having no focus. Not want detachment is about that, say, if you're sitting in this session, now maybe the chair is not very comfortable. It's inconvenient, but you could focus on how the chair is uncomfortable, and throughout the session you may just not get anything from the session because you're just focusing on because somebody is just focusing on the discomfort. They can say, okay, it's just uncomfortable, but it's not that I have to sit lifelong on this chair. It's just for a short while, so I can bear this, and I focus on something bigger. But I want to learn the wisdom of the Gita. I want to learn some principles which can help me in my living. So for us, detachment is meant to be a tool for us to shift our focus to something bigger. So we can choose to be detached from certain issues. Say for example, somebody may not be interested in politics. And now politics can raise a lot of temperatures among some people. And say one person has one opinion, another person has another opinion. And say I'm detached, I don't really care much about this. I'm not involved in this. So we may not have an opinion, or even if we have an opinion, we will not be very strongly invested in that opinion. So we may not really fight for it. But if it's our own home and somebody is saying we want to reorganize the home this way, we have to do this, we have to do that, there it's something which matters much more to us. So it's detachment is not so much about having no opinion. It is about recognizing that not every opinion is equally important, or not an opinion that everything is equally important. So detachment is letting go of the things that matter less, so that we can focus on the things that matter more. So if we are losing our identity, then it is not exact. Then what we are doing is not so much detachment as it is apathy. We're just neglecting, not caring at all. So in one sense, you could say detachment is about choosing our battles. Detachment enables us to choose our battles so that I can live with some losses, so that I can focus on a bigger victory. But if I am not fighting any battles at all, then we will not grow in any way in our lives. If say we are detached totally, then the whole purpose of detachment is so that we become disentangled from the world. We become elevated, we become liberated. But if there's too much detachment, one may become even detached from the idea of liberation. So one may not care for anything at all. That is a misunderstanding of detachment. So another way to put it is, see, detachment is not being cold-hearted. It is being clear-headed. That cold-hearted means having no emotions at all. Clear-headed means knowing which things matter more, which things matter less, and then making our choices accordingly. So, any other questions or comments? Yes, please.
My question is related to the last point, the etiology action, where we are advised to act in a way to reduce our conditioning, and Arjuna was also asked to fight to reduce his conditioning. So I wanted to go deeper into what that conditioning is that that he's been advised to reduce. One is that, okay, he didn't want to do a difficult thing, which is fight, but there's also this, and actually this is a question I have a list of questions when I'm reading stuff. So this is from Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 10, where they say that Arjuna declined to fight as he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. So it kind of seemed like because he wanted to save his relatives, which is Dronacharya and Bhishma, it was his selfish desire to save his relatives. So are we saying that his conditioning is to reduce his selfishness in wanting to save them?
Okay.
Is that, and then how to apply in our lives is like, if I want to do something good for somebody, am I being selfish?
Okay, yeah.
How do I put it in?
It's a good question. See, basically, the conditioning that is being talked about over here for Arjuna, it is that it is to dodge duty during difficulty. You could say duty itself is difficult, but not necessarily. Duty can be done. But like I said, if somebody is a doctor, they go every day to their office, they go to the hospital, clinic. But if pandemic comes, he says, I'll go on leave. Now, why? It's so difficult, the work pressure is so much. Okay, sometimes there is fatigue and somebody is on the verge of collapse, that's okay. But if today we consider that to be a difficulty, and because of that, I give up my duty. Tomorrow some other difficulty may come. And I may think, hey, this is so difficult. Now, at that time, the difficulty may be really big, but tomorrow it might be a smaller difficulty that may deter me from doing my duty. After that, even a smaller difficulty, and a smaller difficulty. So as the conditioning becomes stronger, then the tendency to dodge duty will become more and more. And that is the conditioning to be avoided. So, as I said, the Gita can be seen from different perspectives. And yes, was he trying to protect his relatives and he didn't. Yeah, and that's a natural desire. But protecting his relatives when they were doing wrong, or when they were supporting those who were doing wrong, that is counterproductive. So his desire to help others, to protect others is not wrong. But we can't protect those who are bent on doing harm to others. If we do that, then we become complicit in their wrongdoing. We are also doing something wrong over there. So does it address your question?
Yes, I think it's in line with content and context, right? So if the content is just to save the relatives, then it might be selfish. No, then it's fine. But if it's save the relatives when they're doing wrong, that's selfish.
Yes. I would say selfish and selfless may not be the best categorization over here. You could say it's like wise and unwise, responsible and irresponsible. It's responsible to want to protect our see, there is when you want to protect. See, there are okay. Let's put it this way. When we want to protect our loved ones, at one level, the most we protect them from wrongdoings. That means we give them the wisdom, we give them the resources, like our children. Don't do something wrong. Then we may protect them from the consequence of wrongdoings. Say, if our child goes way above drives way above the speed limit, and is booked, and they say that you'll have to serve time in jail for 1 week. Then we may try to get some way out. We'll pay some fine, do some community service, we'll pull some levers, get some contacts, and try to protect them from that consequence. And that is also a sign of love. But if that person is repeatedly doing the same thing again and again, then sometimes love means stop protecting from the consequences. Now, this is hard love, or tough love as they call it. But sometimes we have to let the consequences hit people so that they realize the gravity. Like if somebody is an addict or alcoholic and there is a codependent, the partner of the addict always keeps cleaning up after every episode. And then what happens is they protect the addict from the consequences. The addict keeps doing more and more. So sometimes you are on your own now. If you're not going to fix it, you have to bear the consequence of your actions. And that may jolt them out of their stupor. Okay?
My question is related to the trilogy of goal, action and result. So while it's not bad to have attachment for the goal.
See, the word attachment has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
So I would say not just having a goal.
Okay, having a goal is not bad. And doing action in pursuance of that goal is also not bad. But as far as the result is concerned, we don't have control and we should not have attachment. So the question is, and we find that results can be either favorable or unfavorable. So for how long should one continue pursuing the action to achieve that goal?
Okay. How long do I have to answer this question? Basically, this issue is addressed in the 18th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, basically 18, 15 and 16, where Krishna says there are 5 factors of action. Adhishthanam tha karta karanam cha pruthagvida vividha shakta cheshta daivam chaivatra panchama. So basically, from action to result, there are 3 factors. It's like a bridge with 3 connecting poles or 3 connecting boards. So it's the place, it's the endeavor, and it's the ability. So what this means is that Say suppose we are considering somebody trying to garden. Now, say they are trying to raise a rose in the Sahara Desert. Now, the place itself can be inhospitable. That could be one cause that the result doesn't come. Now, another could be that the endeavor is insufficient. You try to say, like, as devotees, we cultivate tulsi. Tulsi grows very easily and luxuriantly in India. But you always try to cultivate tulsi in America or Canada or Australia. It's much tougher over there. And then you have to have artificial heating and so many other factors. You try once, maybe it doesn't work, try again. You have to try to see what exact temperature will be suitable at that particular place. So sometimes we need endeavor. So the result may not come because the endeavor is not sufficient. And sometimes it could be that the ability itself is incompatible. That means that person does not have that ability. The person may have ability in some other field. So, say if 50 years ago, say when 30, 40, 50 years ago in India, rock music was not a big thing. Let's just consider Western and something like that. So suppose some Indian kid likes rock music, or say consider some American who likes Indian traditional music. But before Indian bhajans and those kind of things started becoming appealing in the West. Now if somebody has that talent for playing Indian sitar or doing traditional Indian singing, in the West, they might just not be appreciated. But if they come to India, they'll be loved. So sometimes it could be that when we're not getting a result, it could be because the adhishtha, the place where we are, is not suitable. Sometimes we're not getting the results because we just don't have the talent in that field. And maybe it's best that we work somewhere else. And sometimes it could be because we're not endeavored enough. So we have to consider all these three factors. And then based on that we decide. Srila Prabhupada himself, he tried very hard when his Guru Maharaj told him that assist in the mission. So he was already married, so he thought that let me expand my business and let me contribute financially to my spiritual master's mission. And he tried that for 35 years. But Prabhupada was a hard preacher. When customers would come to him for pharmaceutical medicine, he had a pharmacy shop, he would preach it to them. And that was just not being a business person. That was just not his vocation. That was not his calling. He tried it. He did his family responsibilities. But then, after that, even while he was trying to establish his business, he was also preaching in India. Then he retired and tried to preach in India. But despite his best efforts, preaching just didn't work. India was not a hospitable soil at that time. India was too infatuated by the West. And even when he went to America, initially he was treated just like a curiosity object. He was neglected. The people who were the hippies, they just come and go, and they would not. He eventually had to endeavor. For 1.5 years, it was a very difficult period. Till he found people who were not just spiritually interested, but people who were spiritually interested in also becoming spiritually committed. And that's when the movement took off. So we have to analyze if the results are not coming, what is the cause? Okay? Thank you. Any last question before we stop? Yes, please.
You told about from confusion to clarity,
Yeah.
3 steps. ACT, act, Jiva, and Jagdish and
Jagat.
yeah. So these two other things
We will be discussing it gradually. So actually I said that is what we are going to develop.
okay.
But to talk about those decision making elements, we have to go into some extent of the context of the Gita. So I mentioned that I'll be talking about the acronym, but I didn't actually get into that.
Okay.
I'll get into that in next sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you for remembering that and raising that point. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Gaur
ki jai.